Alright guys, today we're talking hognose snakes with the master breeder himself, Eslin from Exotic Fire Hogs.
It's been a long time coming. We've tried to make this happen for a while now. Unfortunately, it wasn't in the plans, but now we're here.
Eslin here's an OG of the crested gecko game. He's been breeding since the mid-1990s. Some of you guys weren't even alive then. Now let's go play with some hognose.
This is the pairing that we're very excited about. This is a sable female, het frosted, which is Evans hypo and caramel. And then this is an anaconda male who's 100% triple het. You know, these guys have a really cool pattern and have really cool bellies. Even the het sables, they end up with green. Sable is a gene that's responsible for the increased melamine gene. So they're very dark animals. They don't always start out dark, but they end up very dark. And that's one of the cool, and I feel one of the staples right now for a lot of combinations and triple gene and quad gene animals is influenced by the sable gene. So that's going to be a staple. It already is, but it's just going to get better and better as we refine it and work on it more and more. And then here we have a sable super conda male who's breeding with the green line toffee anaconda female. A very good example of what happens when you breed an incomplete anaconda gene to a sable. You get sable super condas, and that's like one of the staples right now. It's a very good gene. And you can see he's already trying to mount the female. What he's using is his hemipenes that have scales, and he's pinching the female, letting her know that he's there so that she could lift her tail, and then once she lifts her tail, he can, you know, mount her from the bottom. Fun fact, the snakes have hemipenes. They have two hemipenes, so they're blessed with two penises. And that's because sometimes they lose one. I've had it happen before where males end up losing one hemipene, and then guys like, you know, that's fine, you get a get out of jail free card. Lavender gene is one of our favorites. Lavender is actually a T positive form of albino, so it's what you would consider a caramel class of albino. And I know it's kind of confusing because people say, oh, caramel type of albino, but then there's also a caramel gene. Caramel gene, caramel form of albino, meaning any caramel form of albino is gonna have what you would call no black pigment, because this is a type of albino, albinism gene. And these guys have purple, which is why the name stuck, the lavender name. And this girl is actually pretty cool because she has a lot of red pigment, and it's not a scarring or anything. It's like red paradoxing. And we hatched her out. She's a lavender, 100% het for albino. We bred her to the true hypo gene. That's 100% het for albino in order to make cool combinations that haven't been made before. This is one of our pride females. This is a lavender super conda, and this is one of the more important genes and combinations this year for us. We started producing them 2 years ago. They're relatively uncommon. So lavender right here is a recessive gene, and what you see with the patternless is what you would call super condas. It has 2 copies of the lavender gene, 2 copies of the recessive gene, and it also has what you would call double dose, the super conda gene, which is why it's a super conda. You see the bellies are really clean on the super condas. There's no checkered pattern or anything. And these guys, since they don't have any black pigment, if you could see, the tongue is actually purple and their eyes are purple, but they have a red glare in the middle. Their pupil, their iris is still red because it's an albino. This is a ghost anaconda female, and if you could see the bellies, so it has a xanthic and caramel form of albino, which is an Evans hypo. This is what their bellies look like. They look similar to toxic, but they have more purple and they hold more of a rich color. The toxic, which is toffee belly, and a xanthic don't have such a rich color. They kind of fade out more. So these guys, one of the reasons why I'm a little bit more invested into the ghost projects rather than the toxics, which I still love toxic, but this is the route that we're going, and this is what we're doing. And look, she's already picking up on the male scent. She's 125 grams. She's a 125 gram female, and she's already showing she's interested in the male, or that she at least recognized that there was a male in sight. So this is the frosted super conda female that's 100% het albino. She was bred to a BBC, which is ARTIC sable conda het albino. So we're hoping to make ARTIC condas and ARTIC super condas triple het for permafrost albinos, and some of them will be albino. The cool thing about an Evans hypo when you mix it to caramel that makes frost is the reduced head pattern, and then even cooler is the belly. So the bellies, you see how they lose all the belly pattern. That is part responsible to the side of the caramel gene. The caramel gene is a gene that reduces pattern and it reduces the belly scales, so it's a pretty cool part, which is one of the reasons why I like caramel so much. So this is an ARTIC ultra male, and you can see here the ARTIC ultra male has that belly, very reduced belly, and the head stamp is reduced as well. They have what we call a sock, where it has the two parts back here, and then the middle of the head is usually really reduced. This female has been breeding with that male, so you can see the eggs already starting to form. She has albino also in her, so the eyes are a little bit deeper red, but caramels have slight red eyes, but they're more towards caramel looking eyes. This is an Arctic frosted. This girl's not Arctic, so you can see that her belly scales are almost non-existent. When you put Arctic into it, their belly scales stay, and the reason why is because Arctics have a solid belly scale, and he's an Arctic frosted CONDA, so he still has the influence of all three genes, which is Arctic, Evans hypo, and caramel gene, and then on top of that he's anaconda, so he's a cool gene. And then he has something that is very unique. They have solid black eyes. See, he has solid black eyes. This is an Arctic toffee anaconda, and you can see, like I was explaining with the toffee gene, they have a lot of paradoxing, so you could see the paradoxing all over the top, paradoxing everywhere. When she was a baby, she didn't have a lot of that paradoxing, and then this one doesn't have no paradoxing in the belly, just a little bit right there. Expresses it more on the top than anything else. And this girl was bred to a Mai Tai male, which is sable toffee, so we'll get Arctic toffee condas that'll be 100% het for sable, which is pretty cool. Pink Punch. Pink Punch is a super Arctic toffee. She's an anaconda, so she has that, you know, belly. The funny story with this one is that she's one of the only ones I've seen that doesn't have any paradoxing, which is cool. She's also 66% het for sable, so hopefully when it's her turn to breed, she'll prove out to be het sable. So 66 is a very good chance of proving out. This is what you call a solar flare. So this is a sable, albino, and anaconda. She comes from lineage that has high color, so she's above average when it comes to color. She's a yearling. You can see with the sable gene, it kind of has the outlining in the face and in the head, and being that she's a T negative form of albino, her eyes are very nice and red, ruby red. These guys still color up as they get older, so she still has a lot of room for improvement. Hopefully she ends up being like a nice red color when she's older, but as it is now, we have a lot of different avenues that we can go with her. The goal with her would be to breed her to another form of purple line sable conda or sable super conda to make more of these. This is a super daddy, and a super daddy is probably one of the genetic combos that took a very long time to get to, because this is what you would consider a super Arctic super conda albino. She's got two copies of albino, and she's got what you would consider the super form of super conda and the super form of the Arctic gene. And these guys are really cool because when you breed two Arctics together and you get the super form, they have solid eyes. Super Arctic always has the classic head stamp where it's very reduced, a lot like the caramel gene. That's how you know you have the super Arctic. They're pretty cool belly scales, a lot of iridescence color on her. When she was born, she was pretty much a translucent snake. You could see through. And then as she got older, the color starts to come in. So this is an RBE pastel sable anaconda who's 50% het for toffee. And I know a lot of people struggle believing that this would be an anaconda, but when she was born, she had a lot more pattern, but it was so light that as she grew and the sable gene took more and more effect, she lost it and she got darker. So now the pattern is lost in between the color from the sable, but if you can still see on the top, she has blotches of pattern. This is an Arctic albino anaconda female who's 100% het for sable and 100% het for xanthic. The Arctic gene is responsible for pretty much all the outline and the pattern. They have a lot of marbling or checkered in between the pattern. Also, they have marbling in the face masks, very clean face masks. And sometimes they get pattern in the belly. See how this is an anaconda, it's supposed to be a very clean belly, but you can see pattern bleeding through the belly. That's indicative of the Arctic gene. And this girl, she was hatched in 2021, so she won't be breeding until next year. We slow grow our animals also. Maturity is more important than size. This is an RBE pastel striped super conda, 100% het for albino, 100% het for sable. So she could make sunburst, which is the Solar Flare, and the Sunburst Super Conda, which is the Solar Storm. And then her belly is pretty much nice and black. This is a reverse stripe albino anaconda female. She's She's a little squirmy right now because she's actually in shed. You can still see her face is showing that her eyes are clouded. She's the yellow. I love yellow albinos too, especially when they have the stripe like that. This was produced by our good friends Jamie from J&C Hognose. This is something that he's been working on a very long time, so we were fortunate enough to do a couple of joint breedings where I've given him some of my stuff to add to this, and he's giving me some of his stuff to add to other genes, and it's pretty cool. Working together with, you know, like-minded people is important in the hobby. So this is what you would call a solar storm. This is a super CONDA albino sable, and she's eating me right there. So as you can see, she's hungry, right? So most people will let her chew because they're afraid or they're gonna run to get something. The cool trick is all you gotta do is just push on their nose and they release. That's like a little button. So whenever they do bite or chew, which this wasn't out of aggression, it was out of hunger. At this size, you could never feed a hognose enough. She might go back for seconds. All you do is just grab the nose and just pull it back, and then that pressure that you make releases the pressure and they'll let go. She swelled up for like 2 days. This is another super ARTIC albino super CONDA, which is super daddy, but she's head frosted. So this is a purple line toffee super CONDA, and she's 100% head xanthic. I know, a very hungry female too. See, that's how she needs to chew in order to get their toxins into their prey. What she's doing now is she's holding on so that her rear fangs can deliver her saliva in order for her to stunt the prey because they're ferocious. But if you just use the method I was explaining earlier, you'll pull them out. Like I was saying, toffee is responsible for paradoxing. It's one of the only genes that has consistent paradoxing, even on the belly, even on the top side, you can see it there. And again, look at the eyes. This is a T positive form of albino, and you can see she does have red eyes, but they're not neon ruby red eyes. They're more or less the color of the pattern, which is more of a toffee color. So this is extreme red albino tiger. Tiger gene seems to be a dominant gene. It's a pretty cool dominant gene because it has very distinct tiger-like pattern. It's not to be confused with the jaguar pattern and the tiger patterns are two completely different patterns. The pattern with tiger is a way more uniform pattern, and it usually starts on the top, kind of like a reverse stripe where you could see the stripe on the top and then the pattern goes down. And the jaguar is more of a broken up pattern and doesn't necessarily have what you would consider straight lines. Some of them do, and a more unique and more worked on lines, they do have that more uniform pattern, but generally it's more of a aberrant form of pattern. It'll have a spot and then a pattern that goes down. As you can see here, it's not really spotty, it's just stripes. This is a extreme red albino tiger female. I hope you guys enjoyed our tour. If you guys have any questions, if you have any concerns on your pets and everything, feel free to look us up. We're Exotic Fire Hogs. We're on Instagram, we're on Facebook, TikTok available. I'm always willing to share information. I'm a lot like David where we take pride in what we do, so if you guys want any help or anything like that, feel free. Hopefully you guys liked what you saw, and if you did, there should be more in the future. Thank you for taking the time out of your day to watch our content.